Away in bomb shelters, concrete for a bed, the little lost children lay down their sweet heads. The drones in the dark sky look down where they lay, while they pray to the angels to fly them away. The mothers are crying, the babies awake, the building is rocking, the whole city shakes. Bless all the dear children who are living through hell, but the Lockheed and Boeing shares are doing so well. Oh, Father, forgive them, for they still don't know this world is a sandbox and time's wind will blow away all the borders, every kingdom will fall, and the riches we fight for will be nothing at all.
Hi everyone, welcome to the 114th episode of the Catholics Against Militarism podcast. This is Ellen, and I'm happy to be here with you today. That was my new favorite singer-songwriter. His name is Martin Kerr. I think that's how you say it, and I'll put his website up here, and go check him out. Pretty powerful stuff. He's really cool, and yeah, I highly recommend him. And he did give me permission to start my podcast with his song. So martinkerr.com. It's martinkerr.com. And you should be able to go hear more of his music and subscribe to his channel. I'm so excited to be back with you this year for another year of CAM, and we're going to get started with my two first guests of 2025. Sorry, it's actually martinkerrmusic.com, martinkerrmusic.com. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Welcome to another episode of the Catholics Against Militarism podcast. I have with me today two former guests who have been on the podcast before, and I couldn't believe it when I saw that it's been almost like 5 years since I've interviewed you guys. It seems like just yesterday, but we have Mark Scibilia-Carver here, who is in episode 34 of the podcast. Hi, Mark. Thanks for being here.
Sure.
Mark was the author of a website called The Catholic Cost of War. And we talked about that in episode 34. And then we have Jack Gilroy, who was in episode 6 of the Catholics Against Militarism podcast back in 2019. So thanks for coming back, Jack.
Thank you, Ellen.
Don't hit the road, Jack. Instead, it's thanks for coming back, Jack. All right. Well, we're going to talk today about a few different things. I meet with Mark and Jack occasionally online, maybe once every year or twice a year in our Ben Salmon group. We have a Zoom chat where we talk about Ben Salmon, who was an American conscientious objector to World War I. And we talk about that from time to time. And there's also, I know that there's a lot that you guys are involved in. And I wanted to kind of get updates on what you're up to. So I wanted to know the latest with the Ben Salmon cause for sainthood. I know you guys have been working on that for a long time, and there's a few things that have happened there. And then I thought after we talk about Ben, I would love to talk about any projects. I know Mark is working on something with regard to conscientious objection, which is something I've been wanting to cover on the podcast for a long time, and I've just never gotten around to it. But now that we're all getting excited for another war in the Middle East, this time against Iran, maybe we should talk about conscientious objection and try to educate people about that. So what's the latest with Ben Salmon?
Who do you want to go first?
I think Jack should go first because his great efforts are coming to fruition actually in Denver in February. So Jack, I
Okay.
think you should start. Yeah.
Well, it's been teamwork really for what, 10 years now, Mark? Better than that, 2011, I think, 2010, 2011. Yeah, and I've been to Denver to try to talk to the relatives of Ben Salmon, and we've become good friends with his daughter, Elizabeth, who will be 100 this month. 1925, January 1925.
Do you know what
But
day in January?
I think it's the 15th, but I better check myself on that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Uh, but uh, but anyway, she may end up coming to Denver to run ahead of the game a bit because we are going to Denver. Mark, Father Bernie Serval, and myself, and the artist Robert Shetterly. Robert Shetterly is the portrait artist of 270 Americans who tell the truth. And anyone could go on to that website, americanswhotellthetruth.org. It's all one, not broken up, all one word, Americans Who Tell the Truth. And they will find the newest rendition there as Ben Salmon. That Robert Shetterly was told about Ben Salmon, and he wrote back to say, I've read the letter over 3 times. I've got to do him. Then later, when he was doing the portrait,
Did you send him the letter, Jack?
Yes,
Did you guys send?
right,
That's great.
right.
Yeah.
And then he wrote back while he was painting it, and he's so moved, so spiritually moved by just thinking about what this man did, that he was playing while he was painting Brahms' Requiem. And he said it really helped him through. And he ended up painting him as a working man, because that's what he was. Like so many young white people, dropped out of school, was 14, right, Mark, when he started working really, and worked with the unions, railroad, and a lot of stories that all you have to do is go into bensalmon.org and find the information. Much of it put together by our website manager, Steve Smith, who is our authority, right? Mark, if Mark and myself wonder about whether we're saying the right thing, we'll go to Steve, and he'll correct us or give us additional information. He's a warehouse, a storehouse of information on Ben Salmon, and he's not even Catholic, by the way.
Wow. Okay.
And yeah, that's a lovely statement that he's making. His wife is, but he is not. But back to we thought that we're trying to think of a way that we can get a step to Chicago, because Chicago is where we have to be in order to get Ben on the track according to canon law. In order to get on the track to sainthood, it has to start in the location where an individual died, and that, of course, is Chicago, 1932. So we were looking. We really have spent a lot of time. Mark found the unmarked grave of Ben Salmon. What was that? 10 years ago, Mark? You went out to Chicago. We took the train.
Dates.
Probably about 10 years.
The cemetery personnel were very helpful. They knew where it was.
Yeah. Well, that was good, but he went.
But it was unmarked. It had been unmarked because he died in such poor circumstances. They didn't afford a stone.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. And while we're at it, we can just throw the little jibe in that another Catholic is buried only a short distance away, but this individual had huge marble statues and a big monument, etc. And this Catholic's name is Albert Capone, better known as Big Al. But anyway,
Okay.
back to back to
Ironic.
the back to Ben and how we decided if there's some way that we can, maybe if we can't start in Chicago, maybe we can do something in his hometown of Denver, which would be a stepping stone to Cardinal Supik, who has told Mark and others in letters that he didn't know anything about Ben Salmon. So Mark sent him the website and sent him letters, and we all sent him information. And we actually, spent time out there in Chicago trying to.
Well, actually, we sent him tons of information before he said he didn't know anything about it.
Yeah. Uh,
And so how did you finally, I've always wondered that about like writing to bishops, like, do they actually read their mail and all that stuff? But how did you actually finally get it in front of him? Or,
Well, we made a very formal, we wrote him a letter. We sent him over 900 signatures of people who had signed a petition to him asking, we petition you to approve and support the beatification of Benjamin Joseph Salmon so the whole church can benefit from his witness to Jesus' way of peacemaking. And so we sent him this whole folder with all the names and many of them who had left comments.
oh,
Which are very.
I've signed that. So I'll put that up too in case anyone else wants to sign it.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Did he respond? But he responded to you and.
Yeah, that what Jack mentioned, that he didn't know enough and couldn't justify the expense to the diocese of pursuing a cause for them.
Yeah, the people simply, there's no following out there. We've been told that before, even in Denver, when the bishop there said that there's no cult. You have to have I hate that word, cult.
Yeah.
That's what they said, following. There's really, so we're trying to establish the fact that, yes, a lot of people know about him. And now, since he's been recognized as one of the 270 Americans who told the truth, or tell the truth, and that includes people like Mark Twain and Frederick Douglass and Sojourner's Truth and Harriet Tubman, etc. Kathy Kelly more recently. But anyway, so he decided to do it. But now, what we'd like to do is to have an unveiling somewhere in Denver, and Mark and Bernie and myself and people in Denver. We have, as Father Lally and others, they looked for various places. And we finally broke the ice with a professor at Regis University that you may know, and you do know, Chris Premuk. And I think that you had written him as well, Ellen, didn't you? Or you might have somebody else had written him as well. But the key individual that we thought who would be helping us there is Mike Baxter, but he has left Regis, and he's now, I understand, at Notre Dame, and I guess he must commute between Notre Dame and Denver because his wife and children are there now in Denver. But so Chris has taken it over, and even Chris, when we said, Chris would like you to introduce the artist, Chris decided that the best thing to do would be to have it at Mass. And boy, Mark and myself and Bernie said, absolutely, a captive audience instead of beating the bushes for people. And apparently, and you may know this, but Chris said that a lot of sort of dissatisfied, disaffected Catholics in Denver go to the Jesuit Mass because they feel they get more out of Mass there with the Jesuits. So that sounds good as well. So 10:30 on February 16th, which is a Sunday, there will be a Mass, and following the Mass, Chris and whoever else, maybe Mike Baxter might surface, will unveil the portrait before the audience, before the people there, after a few remarks that I'm hoping that Chris will get out. And we'll have some flyers there too, right, Mark? I think we're going to put together something to give the people. And then there hopefully will be questions from the people as well. And we'll have all this recorded and written down for the Cardinal in Chicago. Nice. And the following day, Chris has invited us to go into class and to go into some of the classes. It's Monday afternoon. So we've decided to stay over on Monday instead of going back home will stay over and take advantage of that opportunity to speak to some young people. So that's it essentially.
That's great. So, will there be like, oh, and what's the church called again where this will happen in Denver?
I was going to say Holy Family, but no, this is the Jesuit chapel at Regis.
Regis. Okay. And is anybody invited to go to mass and see the unveiling?
Yeah, everyone is invited.
Public.
In fact, yeah, there's family of Ben Salmon's in the area. His Ben Salmon's he had two daughters, and of course Elizabeth is the one who will be 100 years old. Margaret died some years ago, but she left 12 children, none of whom are Catholic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, none of whom are Catholic.
Okay.
One has become a Jew, and the other has become a Mormon.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And are they going to come, do you think? They'll be invited or?
Yeah, I think quite a few of them will come. We've written to two of them so far, Rosie Connor of Denver and Betty Moore of Kansas City, Missouri. They were very close to Sister Elizabeth, so they've been written to, and we asked them if what do they think about Sister coming. I actually talked to Sister Elizabeth on the phone, and I said, Sister, we'll get you a wheelchair. She says, I don't need any wheelchair. I said, well, I think that's almost standard operational procedure, right? If
Yeah.
you're that age that they're going to
Yeah.
but she's feisty. She's still just a feisty lady. So it'd be nice if she showed up and if she's there. And
Yeah.
I think from what I heard, they are going to be there on January 15th, being there. I mean, up at the Mary Knowles sister's house in Ossining, New York, for her birthday. And apparently about 5 or 6 of what they call the Malone community, or Malonesville, they're going to, I wouldn't doubt that there are 15 or 20 of them, because there are over 200 people, and they have their own Zoom once a year. They used to come to meet, and they stopped they went to the mountains, and in Colorado Springs was the last time they met, about 3 years ago. But they had 150 to 200 people. Now, I imagine there's a few Catholics among that number.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sounds very exciting. That's a big deal. And the artist will be there as well? The
Yeah.
artist. Okay. And then where will the portrait live? Where will it stay at Regis University?
Well, we've talked to the artist about that, and in fact, I'm giving Chris a couple days off, and I think I'll give him another call tomorrow, or send him a note saying that it's fine. It's totally okay with the artist if the painting is kept there for a while. And I think to suggest to Chris Primick that it would be really nice if he could put it in the library for a couple of weeks, and with a statement underneath, the text that he has. He has the text. We don't have to do it. He has the text. And then the reference to bensalmon.org, where any student could go and check it out a bit further.
And Regis University does have a connection to Ben and Elizabeth Salmon's home parish, Holy Family, where Father Marty Lally was pastor for a while and knew some of the family. So that's nice too.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I forget maybe they supplied the first pastors for the parish of the Jesuit community at Regis. I'm not sure what the connection was, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's very cool. And I wonder if can we get something in like the Denver, well, we can talk about this at our meetings, but it'd be great if we got something in like the Denver, I don't know, publication from the Archdiocese, or
that would be really nice publicity.
Yeah. Yeah, the Denver Post has written articles before. We had a couple of write-ups there. I think the guy's name was McGee, and I don't know if he still writes for them or not. But that's a good. Thanks for reminding us of that. We should get
a topic at our next meeting.
We get a press release out to all of the Denver people. That would be a good job to give the Marty and the crew, right? To get the Denver Guild to do it. It would seem that it would be better coming from them rather than, somebody from out of state.
Yeah, one of you East Coasters,
Right. Yeah, those intruders.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you for the update. I'm really excited that that's moved forward. And yeah, so this is just kind of gathering all more evidence to present to the cardinal to show traction and interest and things like that. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Do you know how many people you need to get on the petition before he would like do something with it? Did he say?
I have no idea, but when he turned us down at some, I thought, gee, I wonder if he looked at any of the names or read any of the comments. Because whenever I want to be inspired or whenever I get discouraged about this effort, I go to the website and I read some of the comments people have left about why they signed the petition, and they're
Yeah.
very
Mhm.
they're powerful and yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
but
it's bensalmon.org, and I'll put that on the screen too. But anybody who's listening, go check it out. This is long before Hitler, long before, Vatican
Franz
II.
Jägerstätter. Yep.
I mean, he was just like, no. I mean, he looked at World War One, and the Pope at the time said that World War One was a useless slaughter. And so even the Pope was not supporting it. But then it seems like all the bishops and priests and everybody did. But then Ben Salmon was like the only one who was like, no, he was like the American Franz Jägerstätter, right? Like
Mhm.
it said, no, there's absolutely no way that this is a just war and we cannot fight it. But he went beyond that and he said, there is no such thing as a just
Right.
war. So he was critiquing the just war theory itself. Yeah.
Exactly. In fact,
That's
his biographer, Torrin Finney, who wrote this book, The Unsung Hero of the Great War, said that I forget what page it is, he said that Ben was the first U.S. Catholic to write a complete refutation of Catholic just war theory. And as far as I know, he's the first one in history to have done that. I have not found anyone else, and I've talked to church historians or asked them. Nobody has come up with a name of any other Catholic who wrote a complete refutation of Catholic just war theory. I mean, there have been pacifist saints like Francis, etc., but they didn't refute the theory. They may have been against all the wars of their time. I mean, St. Francis participated in the Italian city-state wars, and that's what his rejection of that is what led him, or somehow led him to a close encounter with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and it's like, I think, yeah, and then there's Erasmus of Rotterdam, who was against all the wars of his era, but didn't bother to refute the theory. And so as far as I know, Ben Salmon is the first Catholic in history to have done that. And I'm waiting for somebody to prove me wrong.
Yeah, so if anybody
my neck out
knows,
and making the claim, but I can't tell. I don't know.
yeah.
Haven't found anybody yet. And
And
to
he
me,
did that.
that is really one of the major things that makes him saintly in my mind, because the Christian just war theory was the greatest change in our church's history, I believe, and the greatest, what has separated us from the gospel through the centuries and been the greatest source of disunity in the church. All the splits that have developed over the centuries, are after that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, yeah, that's the really key thing about Ben Salmon to keep in people's mind, that some people claim he's a doctor of the church for that reason.
I would nominate him. And he also did that. He wrote it from jail, not from jail, from the mental hospital, right? He was in a mental hospital because at that time, if you said I'm a Christian and I don't believe in war, they equated that with insanity. Right?
Yeah.
right.
Especially if you were a Catholic, because the Catholics had a just war theory. So
Yeah.
there were the traditional, there were some 4,000 conscientious objectors in World War I, mostly from the historic peace churches, but very few Catholics. There were only 4 or something like that who were absolute resistors for the most part. Ben is the only one, of course, who did it on the basis of his Catholic faith.
Okay.
So when he wrote his treatise, which is 235 pages, and his last stop at the mental hospital, Yeah, I think it's pretty unique.
Yeah.
He was the only Catholic who bothered to do that, who really felt that strongly that this was totally against
Because
faith.
they asked him to do it as part of his evaluation. Is that right? Like they were like, okay,
Yes.
explain to us, where do you get this crazy idea that you cannot go kill people?
Yes, he was. Well, he had been through, I don't know, half a dozen different military prison camps. Although he had never been inducted into the military, he was court-martialed, threatened with the death penalty, and then, 25 years at hard labor, which ended up being only 2.5 years. The last several months were in St. Elizabeth's Hospital for the Criminally Insane in Washington, D.C., because he had gone on a hunger strike. The military didn't want him to die on their hands, so they sent him to a mental hospital. And as an exercise to prove his sanity, he wrote down his reasons for his resistance to war. It's 235 pages. He was a good typist. He did this in a short time while fasting and being force-fed on a hunger strike.
Yeah, pretty incredible. So let's segue a little bit. So you guys might have to help me with this. Conscientious objection was never formally approved of by the church until Vatican II. Is that true?
Oh, shucks. I knew you were going to ask me something like that, and I'm not quite prepared for that.
I'm pretty sure it didn't really appear. I think the way it went was they were like, oh, after World War II, World War I and World War II, they were like, oh, maybe we should actually like, because so many Catholics thought that you just had to obey if your government sent you to war. It was just your duty to fight for your country. And the people like Ben Salmon and Franz Jägerstätter who said no, they were the rare exception. So the way I've always understood it is that they decided sometime around Vatican II that they really did need to formally say that you have a right, that states should respect the right to conscientious objection.
Yeah.
Do you know if that's true, Jack?
Well, I'm just reading from the biography again.
Yeah.
The National Conference of Catholic Bishops, 1 year after the close of the Second Vatican Council, reiterated the Council's clear support for those Catholics, quotes, who conscientiously object to bearing arms, end quote. This was the first official statement of the American Catholic hierarchy, which allowed for Catholic conscientious objection. 2 years later, in 1968, the Conference of Bishops restated this position in Part 2 of an encyclical, Human Life in Our Day. Then in 71, the United States Catholic Conference issued its Declaration on Conscientious Objection and Selective Conscientious Objection, in which support was given both to Catholics opposed to war in general and to those opposed to participating in a particular war. The bishops and leaders of the conference wrote, in the light of the gospel and from an analysis of the church's teaching on conscience, not on war, on conscience, it is clear that a Catholic can be a conscientious objector to war in general or to a particular war because of religious training and belief. So there's other things along the line that supported this. And so we're able to say at least that the Catholic Church supports complete conscientious objection to all wars. And so that should be an end to any parish or diocese, because it's, people who want to work on that. And that's why, we would like to see, a national kind of Catholic registry for conscientious objectors.
Okay, and what would that, why would that be a good thing to do?
Well, there already exists a registry for conscientious objectors, which was started quite a while back by something called the Peace Abbey in Massachusetts. So they maintain this registry, but the statement they ask people to sign is not religious. The values are religious, I would say, but it's not stated that way. And so we think there should be one for Christians and Catholics, actually.
Okay. And so, and then my understanding is that, like, there's the Catholic teaching on all of this, and Catholics say you can object to war, or you can object to a specific war, which makes sense because according to, even if you believe in the just war theory, you would have to apply that criteria to any war and then select. I guess in theory, you could say, well, this war is just or this war isn't just.
Yeah.
So they call that selective conscientious objection, where you're not opposed to it completely, but it would depend on the war.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the US government, on the other hand, if I understand correctly, does not believe in any kind of selective conscientious objection.
Yeah.
That in order to, like, if we were to reinstate the draft, in order to get out of going to war as a conscientious objector, you would have to have some proof that you object to all war. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you got it pretty much. Yeah. So in other words, Catholics during Vietnam who wanted to claim conscientious objection, which is had a hard time making a case because their church didn't accepted a just war theory.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they,
So would the registry just be for your own personal like witness and testimony, or would it be more to like if I had a 14-year-old son, or even I guess a daughter now or something, I would be like, get your name on this registry. So if you're ever drafted, there's a record that you are I mean, I wouldn't
yeah,
force my
that's
kid to go.
basically it. If you wait till there is a new draft or uh, conscription starts, then they can say, well, you're just a coward. You don't want to go. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? You already are on record, and there's an organization that maintains the record and will write a letter for you about your sincere beliefs, etc. That's should be helpful in terms of obtaining the status of a conscientious objector, which is something that was a power given to the military, I guess, or draft boards, conscientious objection. So
Yeah.
it's not really where it belongs, but that's what they do. That's if you want to be a conscientious objector in their eyes, it's helpful. Should be helpful to have a statement ahead of time of your sincere beliefs that you cannot kill anybody, that you don't believe in war, etc. So, and
Right.
there have been, the Catholic Peace Fellowship. I don't think maintains the registry, but I haven't even been able to get in touch with them to find out for sure. I don't think they do, but they are big on helping people who are already in the military obtain conscientious objector status. So on their website, they have a number of long, well thought out statements from half a dozen people who have been in the military and applied for conscientious objector status. Yeah, so you could.
Yeah, so that's another thing to keep in mind is that if you go into the military and then you decide not to go to a particular war because you think it's unjust, as Sam Dean said once to me, who was also on the podcast, you'll get court-martialed. Like you'll get taken to jail. Like you can't just decide as somebody in the military that, oh, this particular war is not just, so I'm not going to fight in it. You will get dishonorably discharged or thrown in jail, or I don't know what, but they do something to you. And so that's one way in which the Catholic just war theory, or not, the Catholic teaching does not match up with the reality of the government. It's like there's no selective way to say I don't believe in this because either it's not just or the war is not being executed in a just way. So it's another way that the Catholic just war theory is just sort of a very abstract theoretical thing that does not really apply to real people who are in the military. Because if you follow it, you're going to get in trouble. Right.
Yeah. The idea for this registry came in one of our Friends of Ben's meeting from a Catholic worker named Paul Fraser, who had worked in with conscientious objectors and draft resistance in Vietnam era. And so
Yeah. So are you going to you're going to try to do that, Mark? You're going to try to establish that?
well, where it's at now is we decided, a couple of us talking about it, that it would be really nice to have it come from a group with a national presence. So we immediately thought of Pax Christi USA. So we wrote a letter to them and very quickly got a response that was positive. And they are having a meeting on January the 8th, the national board or whatever, the council of Pax Christi. And so they're going to talk about it and send somebody to our Pax Christi New York State meeting.
Okay.
Another hat that Jack and I try to wear sometimes. We're on the New York State Council. So that's our meeting is the 13th. So we'll have a representative from the National Council to talk about it. And we're really hopeful, that they pick it up. It'll be a lot easier, I think, for a national group to do.
I think that's
There
really
is some
good.
history.
Yeah.
There is some history to this, that the Catholic Church, at least Syracuse Diocese, of which I belong, Mark is in Rochester, but in 1986, there was an auxiliary bishop by the name of Tom Costello from Syracuse, who let it be known to all parishes that their sons, not their daughters, because there was sons being drafted, he would be in several locations throughout the diocese to have individual young men sign their name on a registry. It would be held in the diocese office to show that this young man refused to kill, refused to be involved in war. And so that was good. They met at a community college in 1986, and I took my son Terry over, who was 17 at the time. And Paul Fraser, that Mark was just mentioning, was all excited about this when I told him. He said, well, he could probably make a comment about it. So I contacted my son Terry, who lives in Maryland, and he said, Dad, I have almost no recollection of that. He said, you took me over there. And he said, I thought it was a good idea at the time. Well, he said, but I really don't remember anything more than that. But the fact is, his name is on the registry. He's beyond the age now of being drafted. But if he had been, I think he would have been pleased, because he is opposed to war and killing. I think he'd be pleased that he had that in the registry. So what Mark is up to, I think, is good stuff. And it would be nice if it could become national. And
Yeah.
one other clarification, by the way, a sidebar, is that some people assume that Franz Jägenstätter was totally against all war, and he was not. He was a selective, conscientious objector, whereas Ben Salmon, of course, was opposed to all war.
Right. Got it. Okay. All right. Okay, so we left off and Jackie were saying that Franz Jägerstätter actually didn't object to all war, but when he was a conscientious objector, he was just against Hitler's war and fighting for Hitler. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. Mark, were you going to say something?
I don't know. I had that may well be true, but I had a feeling that by the end he was just opposed to war, period.
I kind of got the same feeling when I was reading his letters. Like, you
Yeah.
could kind of see a development of his point of view. And like, it seemed to me too, by the end, he was probably pretty much against all war. But I know he started out just saying this isn't a just war. Okay, well, this is good. Thank you so much for updating us. Mark, I really hope this happens. I've been teaching high schoolers for a long time. And it just seems to me that, I don't really know what happens with teenagers, but I think at a certain point they have to sign up for the selective service. Isn't that just, I don't know when that happens.
I think it happens fairly automatically, because I think when a lot of them get a license or something, they may have to check off a box that they want to register. But yeah, legally, I think they are required to register for it still.
Yeah. And it just seems to me that, there should be, at that time in a person's life, there really should be a choice presented to them.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people just do it unthinkingly. And I think the church should be more like, you can do this, or you can do Mark's registry. Which one are you going to do? And I think forcing the choice and presenting it as a choice, if nothing else, would just get these kids thinking about it. And it would be a good teaching opportunity. Like, oh, well, what does it mean for me to sign up for the selective service? And what would it mean for me to sign this other thing? It seems like that would make a lot of sense for the church to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was looking at the you mentioned, I think before, my Catholic Cost of War site, where I have the U.S. Catholic Scroll of Remembrance for the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, with over 1,000 names of Catholics who have been killed in the war on terror in Iraq and Afghanistan. And on today's date, first of the year, there are 4 names on here. Now, there probably were 5 or 6 times this many Catholics killed in the state, but these are the only names I could find. And the way I found them was by a record of a funeral mass having been said for them, either a memorial mass or a mass of Christian burial. And so the 4 names today are Brian Perello, who was from New Jersey and was killed in 2005 in a hostile attack in Iraq. He was actually on a boat that was plying the rivers in Iraq, and somehow got fired on and killed. And he was only 19 years old.
Wow.
Not even of mature mind, some would say.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's just a note here saying he was voted the most spirited in his senior class. And then there's Alberto Francesconi, who's from New York and was only age 21 from the Bronx, and he was killed in 2009 in a landmine explosion in Afghanistan. And Edward Cardinal Egan of New York was, I guess, a celebrant, and he commented, "We promise to keep him in our prayers." And then there's Ed Hanzel from Ohio was killed in 2008 in Iraq in an IED attack. And he, at the time, he was working for Wackenhut Services, a military contractor when he was killed. He had been a firefighter for 30 years and was helping provide fire service for 20 different Department of Defense locations in Iraq. And he had signed up to earn extra money for his retirement. He was already retired. And the last one I have is named Thomas Edward Vandling Jr., and I'll just read this one to you because it's kind of interesting. He was an Army sergeant, psychological operations specialist. He was age 26 from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He was killed January 1st, 2007 in Iraq in an IED attack. The funeral mass was at the Church of the Assumption in Bellevue, Pennsylvania, with Father John Gisler, who said Vandling, quote, "left a beautiful positive mark on everyone he met. This beloved young man has taught us so much in such a short time." End quote. He majored in psychology and philosophy at the University of Pittsburgh. Major General Herbert Altshuler, head of the U.S. Army Psychological Operations Command, spoke during the Mass. Quotes, "Tommy was a soldier, a son, a brother, a warrior citizen. He was a model soldier." And Thomas Vandling had also fought in Afghanistan. So you can see from this and many other things in here that the church was fully supportive of Catholics participating in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. In fact, the U.S. bishops voted 167-4 to approve George Bush's war on terror.
Wow.
And I think there's just a total abandonment of these young people to the evils of the society they're living in, the unjust wars that I don't know. So I think we would really like to, I hope the main thing I hope for from the registry would be to make a difference in the lives of some young people. But I also think it would, it's a way of Christian peacemaking.
Yeah.
And we hope also, I think working on the Ben Salmon sainthood cause, I think these are like two sides of the same coin. Working for the sainthood cause or working for a recentering of gospel nonviolence in the Catholic Church. They go together. So.
Yeah, I think they go together very well. Thank you for bringing up those men and their names. I would offer to pray for them right now, but I'll just start crying. It's very sad. But yeah, absolutely. I think that I hope that one day soon, well, it's like, what was that quote by John F. Kennedy? It was like, war will continue to happen until the distant day when we glorify the conscientious objector as much as we glorify the soldier.
I think that's very close to what he said. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think this, I also think it's always been seen as kind of like a leftist liberal cause. And what I see happening in the culture right now is just a wide awakening of like, I've always wanted to do a podcast called Lie or Mistake, like going back through history and being like, was this a government lie? Because in the end, they always look back on it and they say, oh, it was a mistake, right? And we all know it was a lie. So we all know that the Iraq war was a lie. They made up the reason for going. They had other reasons for wanting to be over there. Like Father McCarthy always says on the podcast, wars are fought for booty. That's it. Right? It's never fought for these humanitarian causes or anything like that. And so I just think there's a lot of awakening, in the last 25 years with the internet and democratization of information. We don't have as many gatekeepers anymore. People are waking up to the fact that we're just lied to over and over to go into these wars. And I see it happening on the right too, in conservative media and Catholic conservative media. I see some of these Catholic commentators bragging now about how you can look back at the record and I was against the Iraq war. It's like a feather in their cap now to say that they stood against the war back then. And so I think that's really heartening, and I hope this is maybe a cause that could bring left and right in the church together. So it's no longer seen as like a liberal thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
Well, I'm just what is on my mind is I know we're talking about Catholics and militarism, but my actions over the years have always had centered in the face of Christ and almost everything that I do, and I don't think I have to advertise my religion so much as simply act for just and peace and follow the very first concept of Catholic social teachings, which is the dignity of every human being. And recently we have come up with another kind of conscientious objection pledge. And the pledge, which originated here in Binghamton with students, is that no one should, or the pledge basically states, and I think I sent this to you, Ellen, if you want to ever put it up in another program. The pledge says that I will not interview or work for any corporation, any individual corporation that is involved in doing systems or products that injure, destroy, kill. So it's pointed really at the merchants of death. And it's already been used at both Cornell and at Binghamton University. We'd very much like to get it at all universities in the United States and around the world, because I think it's a key Catholic, Christian, human, social teaching sort of act, or statement. And if we can block the making of weapons, that is going to be a major step forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, like the best brains, the best and brightest minds are all being kind of swept up by the military industrial complex to be used for these destructive purposes, whether it's biological warfare or new bombs, new ways of killing people. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great thing to bring up. And what was it called again, Jack?
It's the pledge, the student pledge to not interview or work for war manufacturers.
Okay.
But that's summarizing what it is. Yeah, the pledge it's worded a little bit differently than what I just said, but you can pick it up in a number of places. The best of all is veteransforpeace.org. Just go to veteransforpeace.org, and the very opening page you will see a fist, and that fist then will lead you to, all you have to do is click onto the fist, to the student pledge. It will also show a video. I was involved personally in working with students in 3 attempted shutdowns of job fairs at Binghamton University and at Cornell. I was not physically involved at Cornell, but there is a video that is shown by Veterans for Peace that Cornell students gave to Veterans for Peace to show about how they used horns, drums, pots and pans until they packed their bags and left. And if that could be done around the country, I think that would really be positive.
Oh, wow. That's great. It's so great to hear that that's still happening on college campuses. I just haven't heard anything about that for
Well,
a
you
while.
won't hear much about it because it's the New York Times and the main media just don't do that.
Yeah.
And the control of the Zionists is well known. Chris
Mhm.
Hedges has a program today. Check that out on how the major networks, the major technical organizations, Google and Apple and what is it called? Meta now. They all are pretty much controlled under Zionist control. And the narrative is, the Arab people are terrorists. And what happened in New Orleans today, of course, is going to make that even all the more true to those who believe that lie, that narrative.
Wait, I didn't hear about New Orleans. What happened in New Orleans?
A former U.S. Army person with a very Arabic name, in carrying an Islamic flag, went into Bourbon Street just earlier today, I think, and killed 10 people. 10 people were killed on Bourbon Street with this vehicle. Then there was a shootout, and he was killed in the shootout.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
you expect to hear quite a bit from the right wing about that. More so than you'll hear about the probably 200,000 or more people killed, massacred, assassinated, murdered in Gaza.
Right.
That's going to push the side.
Out of self-defense. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. And yeah, that whole thing, I often wondered, even back in the day, like back when I was in my 20s, I was like, why is it just so okay to like demonize these Muslims? Like it was never seen as anti-Muslim to talk about their culture or their religion and how they were murderers and they wanted to kill Westerners and stuff. And you just can't talk about other groups like that without being accused of being a
Well,
racist.
as Father Charlie McCarthy says, it was baptized Christians who dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but the religion is not mentioned, right? You don't mention the religion when you talk about all the atrocities that the United States has been involved in over the years.
Right, right. Yeah. Um, wow. Well, yeah, this is all I think this conscientious objection thing would be really great. I mean, it just needs to get on people's minds when they're younger,
Yeah.
because otherwise it takes you like 6 decades to figure out what's going on and to wake up to all this stuff. And by then it's like you're not the one being drafted, you're not the one fighting the wars anymore. So I think your efforts are just really commendable. And I thank you both for like sticking with it for so long and telling people about Ben Salmon and keeping at Cardinal, what's his name? Supich?
Subich, yeah.
Yeah,
And
keep at him.
thank you, Ellen, for doing what you've been doing. I mean, you're a powerful voice, and you should be heard by tens of thousands, millions. But of course, that in our culture doesn't seem to be what people are interested in. The truth of militarism, whether you're talking about Catholics or any other religious group.
Thanks for
Right.
persevering, Ellen.
Oh yeah. I mean, whenever I get those 280 views, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Okay.
When YouTube allows me to be seen by 280 people or something. But you know what? It's not about numbers, right? I mean,
Right.
it's just who knows what seeds are being planted and what, who will stumble across one of these videos and what they're going to do in 20 years. And I really like to take the long view. It's like what Father McCarthy always says. It's like, you know, they could be thousands of years before anything really changes, but every single little thing we do is helping to work for the kingdom of God, and that's all you can do, right?
You're
Amen.
planting the seeds.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining me and kicking off my 2025 podcast with me today. And are you both going to be in Denver?
We
In
will. Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm definitely going to see
Ready
you
for
guys
me.
then. I'm so
Oh,
excited.
good.
great. Oh, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks, Ellen.
All right. Well, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Ellen.
All right. Bye.
I know.
Every kingdom will fall, and the riches we fight for will be nothing at all.